Let's bring in our guest now. Yusuf, we just saw the video. So from very modest beginnings to an extensive network, not only heavily infiltrated within Turkey, whether it be the judiciary, the police, the armed forces, but also a strong presence outside 160 countries. How did this network grow so quickly to be so strong, but also far-reaching?
Okay, during the early days of 1990s, the globalization was the main topic in Turkey. Turkey was opening its doors to the world, and this organization, which is a personality cult and hiding its true motives, always just beneath the bottom. And then in parallel with this globalization, they also opened their gates and they just try to broker deals, they just try to broker new relationships with the outside world, and they just didn't reveal, and this is their characteristic, by the way, they didn't reveal their true identity. But from the very early beginning, as also proven with FETÖ's preachers, it is also proven with FETÖ's preachers, they wanted to take over the country. This was inevitable. But these relationships with the West, with the North, with the South, with the East, just helped and saved them some time, because they offered the globalizing world the leadership of a religious leadership in Turkey, while at the same time hiding their true motives. And 715 was a glorious example to really prove what they were planning about and what they were achieving. That was a bloody moment, and it shows all true characters of this personality cult, and it just openly, very visibly showed their true identities. And that was the moment when all these heroic people, not only in Istanbul, not only in Bosphorus Bridge, but also across all the country, just said no, and they just hit the streets to protect this, because every Turkish citizen knows what FETÖ is. The only part that doesn't know well is the outside world. That's because of their communication strategy, because their communication strategy requires them to hide behind the covers. Okay, when you talk with a FETÖ supporter, they can easily become a very liberal, democratic person, and at the same time they can become really very easily the opposite. We have seen this during 1990s, during 2000s. They were behind the military takeovers. Look at their media and you will see tons of evidences there. They always supported this because they were pitting rivals at each other for their own benefit.
Let's just put a pause on this right now, because there is another man who was actually very close to Fethullah Gülen, in fact regarded as his right-hand man when it came to media. Hüseyin Günerci was the former editor-in-chief and columnist for the Zaman newspaper, a newspaper linked to the Gülenist movement, and here's how he describes the organization.
Fethullah Gülen detaya inildiğinde,
they built an unprecedented movement. First, they call it gaining people. They open houses called lighthouses, in which 4 or 5 university students can stay. They want those university students to communicate to younger students of that neighborhood and help them with their courses. Then those younger students go back home and tell their parents how nice their brothers and sisters are. They explain how those university students can help us in our lessons. The family keeps track of the children. They meet the university students who are helping their children. They see the university students are helpful, honest, well-behaved, so they gain the confidence of the families. Then they start to teach them about Fethullah Gülen. At the same time, they teach them about the rights of the mother and father, which is very mesmerizing for the parents. When parents ask their children, the parents hear their children are taught how to love their parents, how to respect mothers and fathers. So they trust them even more. Families then tell their children, don't abandon those people and this organization.
Let's bring in TRT World's Andrew Hopkins, who joins us now from Ankara. Andrew, just talk to us about some of the main challenges in this investigation into the Gülenists.
Yeah, Alican, I think we're getting a bit of an idea from this program so far about the huge task that's facing the government here. The Gülenist organization, it's been in existence for several decades now. It's been setting up businesses, schools, media outlets. There could quite easily be tens of thousands of people here maybe even more connected with this organization, not just here in Turkey itself, but in other countries further abroad. And this is why the government is saying that the state of the emergency needs to be still in place. We're coming up now to nearly 12 months when this state of emergency has been here, and this has given the government in certain national security situations extra powers to bypass Parliament to take action against this Gulenist organization. And if you look at the figures so far in these investigations, we've got more than 50,000 people either detained or jailed so far, more than 150,000 suspended or have been sacked from their jobs. You get an idea of the scale, the kind of thoroughness the government says that it needs to get into to investigate this organization.
All right, that was Andrew Hopkins live for us in the nation's capital. Thank you for the moment. Well, we've seen the Fethullah Gülen organization establish itself abroad. One country that we don't know much about in terms of its operations is the United States. TRT World's Idris Tianshan takes a closer look at his operations across the Atlantic.
From a rural village in Turkey to upstate New York, Ersin Konkur has had a peculiar journey for a math teacher. He was recruited into Fethullah Gülen's network at the age of 15. After that, the group determined his path in life, including his move to teach in one of the Gülen-affiliated schools in the US. But the day he qualified for permanent residency, he decided to expose the group.
Compared to the ordinary American staff, we Turkish Gülenists in the school were paid higher salaries, a portion of which we were expected to pay back in cash, so they were channeling tax money to the Gulen movement. They do this also through companies they establish to do business with their schools, or they buy buildings just to rent them to their own schools for higher prices.
Konkur is one of the rare defectors to speak up about the group. He says hundreds of other Gülenists have been brought into the US with professional visas to expand their network in the country. In the state of New Jersey alone, a chain of charter schools like this one is linked to the Gülen movement, also known as FETÖ. The organization's attempt to launch a fifth school in the state was denied after the Board of Education said it had used forged and fraudulent petitions to show community support for its initiative. The FBI has reportedly been looking into allegations that taxpayer money might have been channeled to FETÖ, which now controls 163 schools across the country, teaching around 70,000 students. Robert Amsterdam, a lawyer hired by Turkey, says he was astonished to find the extent of the Gülenists' influence in the country.
We know that they're spending something like $500,000 a month in lobbying and PR, and they've been doing that along with their Rumi Foundation and other organizations for years.
No officials from Gülen-affiliated schools were available for comment.
Does it work? I don't know.
And equally hard to reach are dozens of think tanks and cultural organizations connected with the group. They're listed in directories, but with no phone numbers or officials to talk to. Turkish immigrants in the US have been trying for years to expose and limit the group's influence there.
We still don't understand how come Islamic cleric has $1 billion to manage the whole organizations globally. There are over 200 Gülen-linked organizations in the United States nationwide, and most of them is focusing on cultural, business, lobbying, and education.
The extent of the Gülenists' network and agenda in the US remains unclear, because what's public about the group reveals only the tip of the iceberg.
Let's bring back our guest, Yusuf Özhan. Yusuf, there you saw it, quite an extensive network in the States, but one of the biggest sticking points between Turkey and its NATO ally, the United States, is the extradition of Fethullah Gülen. How likely is this?
This is, of course, likely. It's within the possibilities, but so far, I mean, during the last 2 decades, the United States and many Western liberal democracies saw Fethullah Gülen's international network as an opportunity to secure their sovereignty interests, long-term interests in Turkey, because they were, FETÖ was presenting itself as a modern form of Islam which is hand in hand with the Western liberal democracies, but that wasn't the case, because when we see what's happening in the United States, we see the same thing. We see illegal recruitment of the teachers. We see how they donate illegally their money to this network. We see.
But is this going to be enough for extradition?
Of course, it's not. But that's going to be a major part of it, because this is an illegal organization, and it is just hiding this under the cover. It's like a paper terrorism, like the sovereign citizens in the United States. You know, they are trying to put a stop to it, but it's not possible. Because in the future, there is a big difference between what FETÖ represents in the context of religion and what Turkish people is believing. That's. I
do apologize. We're going to have to keep
sure.
it there. Thank you very much for coming on, sharing your knowledge, and providing that insight. Well.